You shouldn't be in here. The voice cuts through the sacred silence of the library, sharp and cold as shattered glass. Julian stands in the doorway, framed by the dark carved mahogany, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the comfortable chaos of books and papers his late wife had curated. His eyes, flat and impatient, fix on Amara. He doesn't see a woman standing with quiet dignity amidst the leather-bound spines. He sees an inconvenience, a task to be managed. This was her sanctuary, he continues, stepping into the room. The air shifts, growing heavy with his presence. He gestures vaguely, a flick of the wrist that dismisses a decade of Amara's life in this house. Just pack her personal effects. The clothes, the trinkets, leave the rest. And for God's sake, don't touch the desk. Amara's hands, which had been gently aligning a stack of Aliner's research papers, still. She doesn't flinch, doesn't protest. Her posture remains unchanged, a study in composure. She simply inclines her head, a gesture so subtle it's almost invisible. An acknowledgement, not an acquiescence. Her silence is a language he cannot be bothered to learn. To him, it is the silence of servitude, the expected response from the help. He strides over to the large oak desk, a magnificent piece of furniture that had served as the epicenter of his wife's intellectual and commercial empire. It is covered in schematics, annotated legal pads, and half-empty cups of tea that Amara faithfully replaced every few hours, just as Aliner had liked. Julian looks at the organized clutter with disdain, as if it's a puzzle he has no interest in solving. He picks up a heavy crystal paperweight, turning it over in his hand. Aliner was sentimental, he says, more to himself than to Amara. The word is a judgment, a soft-spoken insult to the brilliant woman they both grieve in their own ways. All this paper, all these projects, it's a mess. We need to liquidate, simplify. Amara's gaze remains steady. She watches him, her eyes cataloging every movement, every dismissive word. She knows the story behind every single piece of paper on that desk. She knows the late-night phone calls that corresponded with the frantic scribbles in the margins. She knows the triumph behind the final, confident signature on the blueprint lying beneath his hand. He sees a mess to be cleared away. She sees the map of a legacy he is about to torch. He sets the paperweight down with a definitive thud, the sound echoing in the quiet room. The lawyers will be here shortly. Stay out of the way. When they arrive, offer them refreshments and then make yourself scarce. Is that understood? Again, she gives that small, almost imperceptible nod. For a man who deals in contracts and commands boardrooms, he is remarkably unobservant. He doesn't notice the intelligence in her eyes, the way her stillness is not one of passivity but of immense, coiled patience. He doesn't see the person his wife trusted above all others. He sees a uniform, a function, a ghost to inherit and then discard. Would you endure this? The thought is not her own but a whisper from a deeper place, the part of her that Aliner had always seen and honored. The part that knows this is just the opening move in a game Julian doesn't even realize he's playing. He turns to leave, his duty as lord of the manor apparently fulfilled. At the door, he pauses without looking back. "And Amara," he says, his voice laced with a final, weary instruction. "Close the door on your way out. This room is to be sealed until the estate is settled." He walks away, his footsteps echoing down the marble hallway, leaving her alone in the room he just forbade her from. She stands there for a long moment, the silence rushing back in to fill the space he occupied. Her eyes drift back to the desk, to the organized, brilliant mess that holds the key to everything. He wants the room sealed. He has no idea it already is, not by his command, but by a promise made long ago, a promise sealed in secrets he is not yet worthy of knowing. The lawyer arrives precisely at 10. His name is Garrett, a man whose expensive suit seems to be holding him in a state of perpetual rigidity. He carries a slim leather briefcase and an air of professional disdain. He greets Julian with a firm, dry handshake, his eyes flicking over Amara for a fraction of a second, the way one might glance at a coat rack to confirm it's not in the way. They convene at the library's large reading table, pushing aside stacks of Aliner's anthropological journals. Garrett opens his briefcase and the metallic clicks echo in the hushed room. Amara quietly enters, carrying a silver tray with a coffee service, freshly brewed, exactly as Alina had taught her Garrett preferred it, black, no sugar, with a single shortbread biscuit on the saucer. Garrett takes the cup without a word of thanks, his focus entirely on the documents he's laying out. "The primary trust is complex, Julian," he begins, his voice a low, conspiratorial hum. "Alina had a penchant for unorthodox clauses." Julian sighs, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "She called it being thorough. I called it being difficult. Get to the point, Garrett. How quickly can we untangle this?" "That depends on the interpretation of several key articles, particularly regarding the company and the guardianship of Chloe. As they speak, they use Amara as their invisible attendant." Julian gestures for her to pour him coffee. Garrett slides his empty cup to the edge of the table for a refill. They discuss the intimate details of a life she helped build as if she is merely part of the scenery. Amara moves with a quiet efficiency that draws no attention. Her face is a mask of professional calm, but her mind is a razor, dissecting every word, every legal term. "The staff is a potential complication," Garrett says, lowering his voice further. He glances toward Amara, who is dusting a nearby bookshelf, her back to them. "Long-term employees sometimes develop attachments, a sense of entitlement. We need to ensure no one comes forward claiming Alina made them any promises." The microaggression hangs in the air, thick and cloying. He's not talking about the gardeners or the cook. He's talking about the woman standing 10 feet away. "Would you tolerate this, being discussed like a potential pest in your own home?" Amara's hand pauses over a book on ancient cartography. Her grip tightens on the dust cloth. She turns, her expression unreadable, and moves toward the desk to clear away the cold teacups Alina left behind. As she reaches for a cup, her gaze falls upon the leather-bound folder they've been ignoring. Tucked just inside the cover is a thick, cream-colored envelope. It is sealed not with glue, but with a disc of dark green wax, impressed with an intricate design. 2 trees, their roots and branches deeply intertwined. The symbolic object. She has known of its existence for years, known the weight of the promise it contained. Now, seeing it in the open, under the dismissive eyes of these men, feels like watching a sacred object being placed on an auction block. Julian follows her gaze. "What's that?" Amara doesn't answer. Garrett leans over and plucks the envelope from the folder. "A letter, personal correspondence, it seems, probably irrelevant." He tosses it onto the desk, the heavy wax seal making a soft, definitive sound against the polished wood. "Let's focus on Clause 7D, shall we?" They turn back to their papers, the letter and the woman who knows its secret once again rendered invisible. "I want it sold, Garrett. All of it," Julian declares, his voice hardening into the tone he uses to close hostile takeovers. "The intellectual property, the patents, the entire damn company. It was Alina's passion project, fine. But passion doesn't pay for the upkeep on an estate like this. I need liquidity." Garrett clears his throat, tapping a long, manicured finger on a line of dense text. "The trust explicitly states that the company is to remain under the control of the designated trustee for the primary benefit of Chloe. Selling it outright would be a direct violation of Alina's stated intent." "Intent?" Julian scoffs, rising from his chair to pace in front of the fireplace. "Her intent was to build a beautiful cage for herself and now for me. Find a loophole. That's what I pay you for. Argue that the market is volatile, that holding onto the asset is a fiduciary risk to the beneficiary. Argue anything. I want out from under its shadow." Amara stands by the doorway, ostensibly on her way out, but she remains still, a silent sentinel to this desecration of memory. Each word from Julian is a chisel chipping away at the foundation of Alina's life's work. This isn't about financial prudence, it's about ego. Julian was always the money man, the one who dealt in tangible assets and market shares. Alina's company, built on ideas, on brilliant, world-changing code and design, was something he could never fully grasp, and therefore could never control. Now, in death, he seeks to finally conquer it by dismantling it. This is the moment the conflict becomes unavoidable. For Amara, the company isn't just an asset, it is a promise. A promise she and Alina made to each other in a cramped basement office over a decade ago, fueled by cheap coffee and an impossible dream. To stand by and watch Julian sell it for parts would be the ultimate betrayal. The guardianship is the key, Garrett says, his eyes gleaming with strategic light. Clause 7D. If we can prove the designated guardian is unfit or acting under undue influence, the court will likely appoint you, Julian, as sole guardian. As sole guardian, your interpretation of the trust's best interests carries immense weight. We could petition for the sale and likely get it approved. The path forward for them is now clear. Discredit the guardian. Amara feels a cold dread settle in her stomach, but it is quickly replaced by a hot, steely resolve. They think she is a pawn to be swept off the board. They have no idea she is the queen. What would you do next if you were in her shoes? The public scrutiny is about to intensify. Julian looks at Garrett, a cruel smile touching his lips. The guardian is the maid, isn't it? This should be easy. Garrett nods slowly. It should be. They are so confident in their assumptions, so blinded by the uniform she wears, that they cannot see the precipice they are walking towards. The countdown has begun. Amara knows she must act not to save her position, but to save everything Alina built. The next morning, Amara is tasked with the one thing Julian believes she is capable of, packing. He wants Alina's personal office, adjacent to the library, cleared out. Box up the books, the notes, the files. Label everything and put it in storage, he'd ordered. He imagines a jumble of boxes, vaguely labeled papers or books. What he gets is something entirely different. Amara works with a methodical grace that is almost unnerving. She doesn't just pack, she curates. She organizes Alina's vast and complex collection of corporate and legal files, which had been in a state of creative disarray. When Garrett returns that afternoon to collect some documents, he finds Amara in the office, surrounded by neatly stacked, meticulously labeled archive boxes. He stops in the doorway, momentarily confused. He was looking for a specific file related to an early round seed investment. "I'm looking for the Project Nightingale preliminary funding agreements," he says, his tone implying she wouldn't know what any of those words mean. Amara doesn't look up from her work. "Third box from the left, second stack," she says, her voice even. "The file is tabbed Series A, pre-incorporation. You'll find the executed term sheet in the back, cross-referenced with the initial patent application." Garrett freezes. He slowly walks over to the box she indicated, opens it, and finds the exact file, tabbed precisely as she described. He pulls out the documents, his eyes scanning the contents. It's all there, organized with a precision that would make a senior partner at his firm weep with envy. He looks from the file to Amara, a flicker of cognitive dissonance in his eyes. How could the maid know the difference between a term sheet and a patent application? How could she create a filing system more logical and efficient than the one his own paralegals used? Did Alina show you how she organized these?" he asks, searching for a logical explanation that fits his worldview. "We developed the system together," Amara replies simply, not offering any further detail. The "we" hangs in the air, a quiet assertion of a history he cannot comprehend. Did you catch what she just did? She didn't boast. She didn't explain. She simply stated a fact, a small glimpse of the truth hidden in plain sight. Garrett's face tightens. He sees the competence, but he immediately undermines it with his own bias. He closes the box, his suspicion shifting. She's not just a maid, she's a clever one. Probably snooped through Alina's things, picked up some jargon. Yes, that must be it. He files this information away, not as evidence of her intellect, but as proof of her cunning. The small win is instantly reframed as a threat. He walks away, the file in his hand, now more convinced than ever that she needs to be removed. The true heart of Alina's legacy is not in the company's stock value, but in the quiet, grief-stricken hallways of her home, where her 15-year-old daughter, Chloe, drifts like a phantom. Chloe has her mother's fierce intelligence, but not her impenetrable confidence. Since Alina's death, she has wrapped herself in a shroud of silence, communicating only in monosyllables, her eyes perpetually fixed on her phone. Julian's attempts to connect are clumsy and materialistic. He offers her shopping sprees, a new car, a trip to Europe, all things she can have, not feelings they can share. He sees her grief as another problem to be solved with money, and when it doesn't work, he retreats into frustrated impatience. Amara's approach is different. She doesn't push or pry. She enters Chloe's space with offerings of quiet consistency. One afternoon, she finds Chloe in the library, staring blankly at a framed photo of her mother. Instead of offering platitudes, Amara sits down at the other end of the long table and opens a large portfolio case. Inside are the earliest sketches and schematics for the company's flagship product, a revolutionary piece of software that Alina had designed. Amara lays them out, the paper worn and soft from years of handling. "Your mother drew this on a napkin first," Amara says, her voice gentle. "We were at an all-night diner. She was so excited she couldn't stop talking, and she spilled coffee all over the first draft." Chloe looks up, a flicker of interest in her eyes. She inches closer. Amara begins to explain the diagrams, not in technical jargon, but in the language of creation and passion. She tells the story of the code, the challenges, the breakthroughs. She shows Chloe the lines her mother had drawn, the notes she had scribbled in the margins. This isn't a story about a CEO. It's a story about a brilliant, determined, and deeply human woman. "She always said the design had to be like a well-told story," Amara continues, tracing a finger over a complex flowchart. "Clear, intuitive, with a satisfying conclusion." For the first time in weeks, Chloe speaks a full sentence. "She told me that about my essays for school." A small, fragile connection is made. Amara is not trying to replace Alina. She is trying to preserve her, to give Chloe back the mother she remembers, not the abstract figure being debated by lawyers. Amara is protecting the human legacy, the memory of a brilliant mind and a loving heart. If you were there, would you step closer or stay silent? This quiet moment of shared history creates a profound moral obligation. Amara knows that to lose this fight now would be to rob Chloe not just of her inheritance, but of the truth of who her mother was. It is a betrayal she will not allow. The bond with the child becomes the anchor for the storm ahead. The legal trap is sprung with quiet, bureaucratic precision. Garrett calls a preliminary meeting with Julian and Amara, ostensibly to clarify roles during the transitional period. The setting is the formal dining room, a cold and imposing space, with Amara seated at one end of the massive table as if she were a defendant. Garrett explains the legal framework in a calm, patronizing tone. "The trust names you, Amara, as Chloe's temporary guardian." However, he pauses, letting the word hang in the air. Clause 7D contains standard language that this appointment is contingent upon the guardian being deemed fit and free from any conflicts of interest. He slides a document across the polished surface of the table. It's a proposed declaration for her to sign. "This is a simple acknowledgement of your role," Garrett says smoothly. "It states that you understand your duties are limited to Chloe's daily care, and that you will defer all financial, legal, and corporate decisions to the executor of the estate, Mr. Thorne." Amara reads the document. It's far from a simple acknowledgement. It's a cleverly worded abdication of power. By signing it, she would be voluntarily stripping herself of any authority granted by the trust, effectively agreeing that her role is that of a glorified nanny, not a legal guardian with fiduciary responsibilities. It would be Exhibit A in their future court filing to have her removed permanently. The trap is clear. Use her perceived social status to define her legal one. They expect her to be intimidated by the legalese, to trust the lawyer, to sign whatever is put in front of her because that is what the help does. Comply and she loses her ability to protect Chloe and the company. Refuse, and they will paint her as uncooperative and grasping. The clause they're twisting, she realizes, is designed to protect a child from a predator, but they are using it to silence a protector. The rule is being used as a weapon. It's for your own protection as well, of course, Garrett adds, a thin, unconvincing smile on his face. It frees you from any liability. Amara looks from the document to Julian, who sits silently, watching her with an unreadable expression. The choice is framed perfectly. Sign the paper and lose her dignity, her promise, and her power to act. Refuse to sign and risk being portrayed as a greedy, manipulative servant, confirming every biased assumption they have about her. The system is closing in, using its own rules to create a no-win scenario. Amara does not sign the document. Her refusal is quiet but firm. I will uphold the duties outlined in Alina's trust, she says, pushing the paper back across the table. All of them. The politeness of the meeting evaporates. Julian's face darkens with anger. Garrett's expression hardens into one of cold resolve. The trap has been sprung, and she has refused the bait. Now comes the punishment. The next day, the setback is swift and brutal. Julian, on Garrett's formal advice, exercises his power as executor. He issues a formal letter to Amara. Her guardianship duties are temporarily suspended pending a formal competency review by the court. She is to have no further contact with Chloe. She is confined to her staff quarters in a separate wing of the house. A security guard is posted in the hallway. The door has not just closed, it has been locked and bolted. The isolation is absolute, but the cruelest blow comes from Chloe. Julian, in a calculated move of emotional manipulation, sits his daughter down and tells her a poisoned version of the truth. Amara is trying to take control of everything your mother built, he says, his voice full of false concern. She refused to sign a document that would protect you, Chloe. She's after the money. I'm trying to stop her. For a teenager already adrift in a sea of grief, this seed of doubt is devastating. When Amara tries to send a note to Chloe, it is returned, unopened. Later that day, from her window, she sees Chloe in the garden. Their eyes meet for a brief second across the manicured lawn. Amara offers a small, hopeful smile. Chloe turns away. That single act of turning away is more painful than any legal maneuver. The one person she was fighting for now sees her as the enemy. The system has pushed back, her allies have vanished, and the resources she had, trust, access, love, have been severed. What would you sacrifice to stay true to a promise? That evening, sitting alone in her small, sterile room, Amara feels the crushing weight of her predicament. Everything seems lost. Julian's rationale is, in his own mind, perfectly human. He believes he is protecting his family and his inheritance from an overreaching employee. He is not a cartoon villain. He is a man blinded by grief, arrogance, and a lifetime of societal prejudice. This makes him even more dangerous. Amara looks at her reflection in the dark window. She sees the fatigue in her eyes. For a moment, she allows herself to feel the despair. Then she takes a deep, steadying breath. This is not over. They have made a critical error. They have isolated her, yes, but they have also given her the one thing she needs most, time to think. She makes a quiet vow in the darkness. They have underestimated the wrong woman. For 2 days, Amara remains in her designated quarters, a ghost in the house she helped run. She eats the meals left outside her door and speaks to no one but the rotating security guard, to whom she is always polite. Julian and Garrett mistake her silence for surrender. They are preparing their court filings, confident of their victory. They have forgotten about the corporate bylaws. On the 3rd day, Amara makes a formal written request to Julian. It is delivered by the guard. The note is brief and impeccably professional. It reads, Julian, per Article 12, Section 4 of the Thorn Innovations Corporate Bylaws, I am requesting an emergency meeting of the board of directors to be convened with the executor and all named parties of the E. Thorne Trust. The bylaws stipulate such a meeting must take place within 48 hours of the request. I propose the meeting be held in the library, where all necessary documents are housed. Sincerely, Amara. Garrett reads the note and laughs. She's bluffing. It's a desperate, sentimental ploy. She wants an audience. He sees no legal threat. The bylaws are a corporate matter. Their fight is a domestic one concerning guardianship. He sees no harm in granting the request. In fact, a meeting with the board present could be the perfect venue to publicly cement their narrative of Amara as an unstable, grasping employee. Fine, Julian agrees. Let her have her stage. Let's see what the maid has to say to the board of a billion-dollar company. They have walked directly into her hands. That night, with the meeting confirmed, Amara prepares. She doesn't assemble a defense. She doesn't gather evidence to prove her fitness as a guardian. Her plan is much simpler, much more profound. She takes out a small, locked case from her closet. Inside is her own copy of the trust document, a copy of the partnership agreement she and Alina had drafted years ago, and a single, unsealed letter identical to the one in the library. A failsafe Alina had insisted upon. She spends hours rereading the documents, not with the eyes of a friend, but with the cool, dispassionate focus of the legal mind she once was. She is no longer just protecting a promise. She is preparing to execute a legally binding directive. Her grief is set aside. Her fear is banished. What remains is pure, focused competence. The next morning she dresses not in her staff uniform, but in a simple, elegant dark gray dress she has saved for years. When the guard comes to escort her, he does a double take. She is no longer the quiet, unassuming housekeeper. She is someone else entirely. She walks toward the library, her step steady and sure. She is not entering a hearing where she will be judged. She is entering a boardroom where she will take command. This is the proving ground. The library is arranged like a tribunal. Julian and Garrett sit on one side of the long table. Amara is directed to a single chair on the other side. On a large screen at the end of the room, the faces of the 6 board members of Thorne Innovations appear, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and impatience. Chloe is not present, for which Amara is grateful. Julian opens the meeting with a condescending summary. "We are here at the request of Miss Vance," he says, his use of her last name dripping with false formality. "She has concerns regarding the administration of my late wife's estate." Garrett takes over, launching into a carefully prepared speech about their intention to file for Amara's removal as guardian, citing her lack of financial acumen and obstructive behavior. He paints a picture of an employee confused by her station, a woman whose emotional attachment has clouded her judgment. The board members listen, their faces impassive. When Garrett finishes, all eyes turn to Amara. The room is silent, pregnant with expectation. They are waiting for a plea, an emotional outburst, a clumsy defense. Amara does not speak. Instead, she stands, walks to the head of the table where the leather-bound trust folder sits, and calmly retrieves the cream-colored envelope with the dark green wax seal. She holds it up for all to see on the screen and in the room. "Before we discuss my fitness," she says, her voice clear and steady, resonating with an authority no one in the room has heard from her before, "I believe we should hear from the founder and former CEO of this company." Alina left one final piece of correspondence. "I believe it is relevant to this discussion." Julian starts to object. "That's personal." But one of the board members, an elderly man named Marcus Thorne, Julian's uncle, holds up a hand. "Let's hear it." With all eyes on her, Amara breaks the seal. The snap of the old wax is the only sound. She unfolds the letter and begins to read. "To my board, to my husband, and to Chloe," the letter begins. Alina's voice seems to fill the room through Amara's calm recitation. "If you are reading this, it means the protections I have put in place are being challenged. So let me be unequivocally clear, and let this letter serve as my final directive. Amara pauses, her eyes sweeping across the stunned faces in the room and on the screen. Amara Vance is not, and has never been, my maid. She has been my business partner and co-founder since the day Thorn Innovations was nothing more than an idea on a napkin. For personal reasons that were her own, she chose to remain a silent partner, taking on a role within my home that allowed her the privacy she desired and me the counsel I required. The uniform was a costume, her silence a shield. Did you feel that shift? The entire power dynamic of the room fractures, collapsing in on itself. Garrett's face has gone pale. Julian looks as if he's been struck by lightning, his mouth slightly agape. Amara continues reading. She is not merely Chloe's guardian. She is the architect of our core technology and the co-author of our business strategy. Her name is on the original patent, filed under a private trust we created a decade ago. Furthermore, Amara's voice does not waver as she delivers the final, devastating lines. As per the legally binding partnership and succession agreement, which is filed as Addendum B to my trust, in the event of my death, Amara Vance's silent partnership is activated. She is to assume a 51% controlling interest in the company and the title of Chief Executive Officer, effective immediately. This directive is non-negotiable and absolute. She finishes reading and gently places the letter on the table. The silence that follows is profound, absolute. It is the sound of an entire world being remade. Julian is frozen, his arrogance shattered. Garrett is staring at the letter as if it's a venomous snake. The maid they tried to discard has just been revealed as the queen. The consequences are about to land. The fallout is immediate and seismic. Marcus Thorne is the first to speak from the screen, his voice grim. Garrett, Julian, is this succession agreement news to you? Garrett, for the first time, is utterly speechless. He shuffles through his copy of the trust, his hands trembling slightly as he fumbles for the addendums he had dismissed as boilerplate. Julian simply stares at Amara, a maelstrom of shock, betrayal, and dawning, horrified understanding in his eyes. The board excuses them from the call, requesting a private conference with their new CEO. Before she joins, Amara turns to the two men left reeling in the library. This is her moment of victory. She could destroy them. She could have Garrett disbarred for his tactics, have Julian publicly humiliated for his ignorance and cruelty. Revenge is a feast laid out before her. She chooses not to eat. I know this is a shock, she says, her voice devoid of triumph. It is calm, measured, and full of a grace they do not deserve. Alina knew it would be. She valued privacy, but she valued her legacy more. And that legacy includes this company, and it includes her daughter. She looks directly at Julian. I have no interest in punishing you. You are grieving. You are Chloe's father. That will not change. But the sale of this company is off the table, permanently. Her ask is not for an apology or retribution. It is for something far more constructive. It is a choice of soft justice. What I want, she continues, is your cooperation. I want us to work together for Chloe's sake. I want you to help me honor your wife's memory, not erase it. The company will need a steady hand on the financial side, a role you are suited for, should you choose to accept it. She is offering him a bridge, not a sword. She is giving him a way to save face, to find a new purpose within the structure she now commands. What does real justice look like here? For Amara, it is not about winning, it's about healing. It's about building a future, not dwelling on the injustices of the past. Garrett, finally finding his voice, stammers, "This is highly irregular." "The world is full of irregular women, Garrett," Amara says, a faint, sad smile on her lips. Alina was one of them. So am I. She leaves them there in the silent library to weigh her proposal. The stakeholders in this broken family have a choice: cling to the wreckage of their pride or accept the lifeline she has offered and begin to build something new. The change within Thorn Innovations is not just at the top. It ripples through the very DNA of the company. In her first official act as CEO, Amara does not conduct a purge or a victory tour. She convenes the heads of HR and legal to formalize a policy that she and Alina had often discussed, but never implemented. She calls it the Alina Clause. The policy is a radical new protocol for succession and talent development. It is formally named Succession Protocol 11B, the Alina Clause. Its primary function is to prevent the kind of institutional blindness that almost allowed Julian to destroy the company. It mandates a biannual, confidential audit of all employees, from the janitorial staff to the senior VPs, to identify latent talents and unseen contributions. Employees are encouraged to list degrees, certifications, language fluencies, patents, or significant projects completed outside of their official job descriptions. This isn't just about finding hidden gems. The policy changes how the company defines value. It stipulates that in any leadership or promotion review, the data from this talent registry must be considered alongside traditional performance metrics. Contribution is now officially valued over title. The policy is enforced by a newly formed independent oversight committee, which Amara herself chairs for the first year. The resistance is subtle but present. Some executives grumble about the bureaucracy, about valuing a janitor's night school degree the same as a VP's MBA. But Amara is firm. At the all-hands meeting where she announces the new policy, she says, "The most valuable asset this company ever had was a silent partner no one saw. We will not make that mistake again. We will build a system that sees everyone." Would this change be enough in your workplace? The change begins to take root. A security guard with a PhD in logistics is moved into a supply chain optimization role. A cafeteria worker who is a gifted amateur coder is offered a spot in the company's tech incubator. The path is opening. It doesn't eliminate bias overnight, but it creates a formal, structural pathway to bypass it. The Alina Clause ensures that the company's greatest assets will never again be hidden in plain sight, armed only with a secret letter and a silent promise. A week later, the house is quieter. The lawyers are gone, the tension has subsided into a fragile truce, and Julian has retreated to the city to consider his options. The library has become Amara's office, the command center from which she is steadily and quietly righting the ship. One evening, Chloe appears at the door. She doesn't knock, just hovers uncertainly in the frame. In her hands, she holds a small, silver-framed photograph. She walks over to the desk and places it gently in front of Amara. It's an old photo, taken years ago at a company picnic. A much younger Amara and Alina are standing side by side, laughing, their arms thrown around each other's shoulders. They are not employer and employee. They are partners, equals, friends. "I found this in her bottom drawer," Chloe says, her voice barely a whisper. "She never told me." The words are not an accusation, but a quiet lament for the secrets her parents kept. Amara looks at the photo, a wave of warm memory washing over her. "We were celebrating our first big contract," she says softly. "We bought the worst champagne we could find and drank it out of plastic cups. Your mother, she had the most wonderful, unrestrained laugh. She doesn't try to explain the complexity of the secrets. She just shares the truth of the friendship. She tells Chloe about their shared dream, about the struggles and the triumphs. She paints a portrait of the woman, not the icon. In the quiet calm of the library, surrounded by the books and papers that were the testament to Alina's mind, the two of them begin the slow, painful work of healing. Chloe finally looks at Amara, her eyes clear for the first time in months. "She trusted you," she says. It is a statement of fact and acceptance. "And I trusted her," Amara replies. In this quiet conversation, with no grand gestures or dramatic apologies, a new bond is forged. Amara is no longer defined by the uniform Julian saw, but by the friend Alina knew and the guardian Chloe is beginning to see. She has reclaimed her own story, and in doing so, has helped Chloe begin to reclaim hers. The healing has begun, not with a public victory, but with a whispered story in a silent room. Amara's first official board meeting as CEO is a tense affair. The members are still grappling with the seismic shift in the company's structure. They are polite, professional, but watchful. They are assessing her, waiting to see if the brilliant silent partner can be an effective public leader. She is not what they expect. She doesn't deliver a rousing vision speech or a dramatic overhaul of their strategy. Instead, she presents a quiet, methodical, and deeply intelligent analysis of the company's current state. She identifies operational inefficiencies, highlights untapped market opportunities, and outlines a clear, logical path forward. Her command of the details is absolute. She speaks of the company not as something she has inherited, but as something she has known intimately from its foundation up. When she finishes her presentation, there is a moment of silence. The board members exchange glances. They had been prepared for a story. She gave them a strategy. Then, Marcus Thorne, the elder statesman of the board and Julian's uncle, clears his throat. He doesn't offer fawning praise or a patronizing welcome. He looks at her with a newfound respect, an acknowledgement of competence that transcends the drama of her arrival. Eleanor always said the most brilliant mind in her operation was the one no one saw, he says, his voice raspy with age but firm with conviction. She spoke of her partner's ability to see the whole board, not just the next move. It's good to finally have you at the head of the table, Amara. The recognition is specific. It is not for her courage or her dramatic reveal. It is for her mind, for the work she had been doing in the shadows for years. It is a welcome back, not a welcome aboard. Recognition done right, agree. Amara simply nods, accepting the acknowledgement with the same quiet dignity she has shown all along. The meeting continues, the tension in the room replaced by a burgeoning sense of purpose. A door has opened, not just for her, but for a different kind of leadership, one based on quiet excellence, not loud authority. And in that room, it is clear that she is not a replacement for Eleanor, but her rightful successor. Months pass. The company stabilizes and begins to thrive under Amara's leadership. Julian, after a period of soul-searching, accepts a redefined role, managing the family's investment portfolio, a position that allows him to contribute without undermining her authority. The house is calmer, and the fragile peace is slowly turning into a genuine family. One afternoon, Amara sits at her desk, Eleanor's desk, now truly hers. She is designing the logo for the new charitable foundation she has established in Eleanor's name, the Eleanor Thorne Legacy Foundation for Unseen Talent. She idly picks up a small, velvet-lined box she keeps on the corner of the desk. Inside is the broken wax seal, its two halves resting side by side. She runs a finger over the intricate design of the two intertwined trees, their roots and branches woven together into an inseparable whole. For years, that seal was a symbol of a secret, of a promise kept in the shadows. It represented a hidden identity, a partnership that could not be spoken aloud. When she broke it in the library, it became an instrument of truth, the catalyst that shattered a false reality. Now, looking at it, it means something else entirely. It is a symbol of a bond made public, of roots that run deeper than anyone knew, and of a partnership that transcended even death. It represents strength, connection, and a legacy that is now visible to the whole world. Did the object's meaning change for you too? Amara smiles. She takes a sketchpad and begins to draw. The design is simple, elegant, and powerful, two intertwined trees, their branches reaching for the sky, their roots firmly planted in the earth. The wax seal, once a mark of secrecy, is about to become the public emblem of their shared dream. She is ready for the future, a future built on a truth that no longer needs to be hidden. A year later, Amara and Chloe walk together through the gleaming, redesigned lobby of Thorne Innovations. The air is buzzing with the energy of collaboration and innovation. On a large digital display near the entrance, the company's official values statement scrolls by. The header reads, "Our commitment, the Aliener Clause, honoring unseen contributions." The policy she implemented is no longer just a rule, it is the cultural cornerstone of the entire organization. They pause before a new installation, a beautifully lit glass case that has become a mandatory stop for all new employee orientations. Inside, resting on a bed of dark velvet, is the original partnership agreement, signed in a cramped basement office over a decade ago. The signatures of Aliener Thorne and Amara Vance are faded but clear. Next to the document, carefully preserved, are the two halves of the broken wax seal. A tour guide is speaking to a group of new hires. "This case represents the core principle of our company," the guide says, her voice full of conviction. "It reminds us that talent doesn't always have a title, and the most important contributions can come from the places we least expect. It reminds us to always see the whole person." Amara watches, her expression calm and content. Chloe leans her head gently on Amara's shoulder, a gesture of easy affection and shared understanding. They are not just family, they are partners in preserving a legacy. The room has changed because the truth has finally been given a permanent, honored place within it. Amara puts a reassuring arm around Chloe's shoulders. She doesn't need to speak. The silence is no longer one of invisibility or oppression. It is a silence of peace, of dignity, of a future secured, whose quiet work built the foundation you stand on today.